Brad Haines, nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
One of the fun things about coming to events like this is I always view the world as full of friends and potential friends, and I have a new one now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's been good to meet you. And tell us a little bit about your world. What do you invest in, Brad?
Well, first and foremost, pipeline construction has been a big part of my world for a long time. We've been in and out of that business. We have diversified over the years into aerospace, banking, real estate, a few different verticals that we have, and we're very proud of all of them.
The Powering AI Summit that we're talking about today goes through pipelines, doesn't it?
It takes pipeline to get it there. So, there's a lot of interesting people here. There's a lot of interesting things being said. The one common thing is that we better get on the ball, we better get after it, or it's not going to happen. We're going to be behind.
So what recommendation do you have for people? Obviously, there's a lot of government leaders here. What can they do?
Well, I think as a construction person for many, many years, being around the business for 45 years, there wasn't a lot of regulation 45 years ago. But over time, some of the things with all government agencies, they become more regulation, more regulation, more regulation. I think, as they're saying here today, that the permitting process is going to be, a lot faster, which is needed badly. I think where they need to lighten up some regulations is in the EPA side. We all want to protect the environment, but they've got so many rules and regulations that they need to at least try to get some of the silly ones out of there, so that will speed up the construction process, and I think that's badly needed.
When it comes to regulations, critics of the fossil fuel industry in general, are very hyperbolic. Sky's going to fall if you don't have 88 layers of regulation. From a pipeline developer's perspective, just explain to people what motivation you have related to safety and pipeline integrity and no disruptions. I think some people think you're just trying to rape and pillage the land, where your pipelines could care less about the land you're under or over or whatever. Bring us into that world of how much motivation you have to make sure there's no economic or environmental harm.
Well, I grew up on a ranch in Oklahoma. And so as landowners, one of the things that we always were very particular about in the construction world is because we cross a lot of different landowners. And we try to treat their land just like we would treat our own land. And so, fast forward, we used to be able to, cross a small stream that was dry most of the time. And then here come the regulations. Oh, that's a wetland. There's a lot of interpretation of what's really a wetland, what's really not. And so it just got to be anything that possibly had water running down it when it's raining become a problem, and you had to use these other techniques to cross that little wetland where we used to be able to just go through it. It doesn't hurt anything, and if it's certainly a body of water, yes, it needs to be protected.
From your first time building a pipeline 45 some years ago to today, talk about the innovation, the technology, the things that make it safer more today than it was yesterday.
I think one of the leading promising things is the horizontal directional drilling really changed the industry. Whereas we have the ability today that we didn't have 45 years ago to directionally drill underground, under a lake, under a big body of water, through very congested areas, through various techniques. We don't even have to go in there and disturb that at all. We can get on one side, we can drill underneath it, pull the pipeline through where we drilled, and it doesn't affect anything. I think that's been the greatest improvement. The technology to build pipelines hasn't really changed much. There's automatic welding procedures that there wasn't back years ago where it was all done by hand. A lot of things to speed up the process and to make it safer.
But the fundamentals are pretty much the same.
Fundamentals are still there.
How about the technology on leak detection and shutoff valves and all of that?
Well, that's come forward a long ways, and it's something that you can isolate if there's a problem with the pipeline. It's very important to be able to isolate that section off by valves and different things that has really improved over the years. And pipelines are safer today. I think the pipe's safer. I think the coating that protects the metal is much better today. And so there are just lots of things that these pipelines, we don't know how long they're going to last. The old ones would last 50, 60 years. And so you add all this new technology that makes them stronger and better and safer. They could be a 100-year pipeline. We just don't know yet.
And as a pipeline developer and someone that has companies that service pipeline development, your motivation is to never have an incident, right? I mean,
never. And that's, you mentioned safety a while ago. I think that's the number one thing we all look at. Today we have safety meetings every morning. I don't care if you've got 800 or 1,000 people on that pipeline job. There's a safety meeting every day. And the idea is to get through that pipeline, not get anybody hurt, and have a successful project.
When we met last night, I told you I was from North Dakota. You told me an interesting story about a very famous pipeline in North Dakota, our very first CO2 pipeline. Talk about how you became part of that project.
First of all, you made me smile when you said you were from North Dakota, because it was a great experience for us and our construction company. I believe it was in 1999. It was a large project, very well sought after in the United States. We were very fortunate as a company out of Oklahoma to be awarded that contract. It was a CO2 pipeline. It was called Dakota Gasifications Project, and it came out of Beulah, North Dakota, ran over towards Killdeer, up toward Tioga, and up to the Canadian border. And very successful project. We were well accepted in North Dakota. No problems, no protests, no nothing. It was a great time.
And it's also now a very important commodity. It obviously proved successful for Dakota Gasification and the community of Beulah to do that and send that up to Canada so they could enhance their oil recovery with tar sands. But now there's this explosion of opportunity that has come from CO2 by coming off of coal plants or ethanol plants, sequestration or enhanced oil recovery. Are we going to see a proliferation of CO2 pipelines, do you believe?
Well, I think there's always going to be a need for CO2, and it can be used in various ways. I think the utility company was ahead of their time a little bit in what they were trying to do, and it proved out to be very successful for them. And so we've always had a soft spot in our heart for North Dakota, because it was a great time for us.
And the innovation you were telling me about last night, where initially the pipeline under Lake Sakakawea for 3 miles was pipeline at the bottom of Lake Sakakawea.
Yeah, it was designed to float actually about 6 inches off the bottom of the lake. As I remember, it was a little over 3 miles across one of the narrowest points in that lake. And it was designed to float 6 inches off the bottom. It was all calculated by the engineers. As we installed that pipeline, once it was in, we sent divers down to make sure that the pipeline was where it was supposed to be, and it was floating exactly in the right spot, and it worked just fine. And today, we have the ability today, as I said, in horizontal directional drilling, to go in there and actually drill that 3 miles and
underneath in the bedrock.
Yeah, underneath the bedrock, to make sure that that pipeline is never disturbed.
And you ultimately did that with this project, right? Yeah.
I believe it was ultimately redesigned once that technology became available.
Has there ever been an incident with the CO2? Has there ever been anything that harmed land, water, you know?
Not to my knowledge. You know, it runs under a pretty high pressure, and so the pipe was a thicker than normal pipeline, just simply because of the pressure that's required.
There's been a project on the table that has been approved in North Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa, but was not in South Dakota, or has not yet in South Dakota. It's become very controversial from people concerned about, I don't want CO2 pipelines under my land, it's not safe. Use an incident in Mississippi to suggest that CO2 pipelines are bad. What do you say to those people that are concerned about you know, CO2 being in the neighborhood or under their land?
Well, we've installed, I can't tell you for sure offhand over the 45 years I've been in business, but we've installed thousands of miles of pipeline. And to my knowledge, of every mile that we ever installed, as well as most pipelines, there's never been incidents. There's never been, you know, leaks or problems, or once that pipeline is buried 4 or 5 feet under the surface of a landowner, you'll never see it again.
And specific to CO2, is there any reason people should worry about CO2 versus refined product or oil, gas?
I have no doubt that, you know, it's not any different than anything else.
Yeah, very interesting. A conversation we need to continue to have, because it's an important commodity going forward on so much of what we're talking about today, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, good to meet you. Thanks for doing what you did in North Dakota, and continued success.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to have this conversation.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.